The first light of dawn was just beginning to paint the sky, with streaks of pale pink and gray as Lily and her mother stood on the edge of Pennsylvania Avenue, the iconic thoroughfare leading to the White House. The early morning air, crisp and carrying the bite of late autumn, nipped at Lily's exposed cheeks, turning them a rosy hue that contrasted with the serious expression on her young face. At 11 years old, Lily possessed a wisdom and determination that belied her tender years. She understood, with a clarity that only desperation could bring, that reaching President Donald Trump, the most powerful man in the world, wouldn't be a simple task, a walk in the park, or a quick phone call. It was a formidable challenge, a mountain to climb. Yet, the heavy cloak of desperation that clung to her family, suffocating them like a persistent, wheezing cough, fueled a resolve within her that burned with an intensity far beyond her age. Lily clutched two precious items in her small hands. The first was a carefully written letter to the president, folded and refolded so many times that the creases were soft and worn like well-loved fabric. It was a testament to the countless hours she had spent crafting each word, each sentence, pouring her heart and her family's plight onto the paper. The second was a vibrant drawing of her family, rendered in bright crayons on thick art paper. In it, her father, mother, and herself stood hand in hand, bathed in the sunshine of a happy home, a poignant contrast to the shadows that had recently fallen over their lives. They had arrived in Washington, D.C. late the previous night, the long bus journey from Ohio a blur of fleeting landscapes and anxious thoughts. The meager savings they had scraped together had paid for the journey and a modest hotel room, a temporary sanctuary in a city that felt both grand and indifferent. Days blurred into a relentless cycle of waiting. Each morning, Lily and her mother would take the metro, the rumble of the train a soundtrack to their growing fatigue and unwavering hope, and position themselves near the White House gates. They were just two faces in the ever-present crowd of tourists, protesters, and hopeful petitioners, each with their own stories and agendas. Lily watched the imposing iron gates, their intricate designs a symbol of power and inaccessibility, and felt a pang of doubt. How could she, a small girl from Ohio, ever hope to penetrate this fortress of authority? Yet, Lily was not one to be easily deterred. She had inherited her father's quiet strength and her mother's unwavering spirit. On the third day, fueled by a mix of desperation and a spark of audacious courage, Lily decided to take a bold action. As the presidential motorcade swept out of the White House gates, a fleeting glimpse of the black limousine and the fluttering American flags, Lily broke away from her mother's side. Ignoring the shouted warnings of the security personnel, she darted forward, her small legs pumping with surprising speed. She held her drawing aloft, a beacon of color amidst the somber security detail, her letter clutched tightly in her other hand. The world seemed to slow down. The roar of the motorcade, the shouts of the security, the frantic beating of her own heart, all faded into a muffled background hum. She saw the limousine slow, then stop. A ripple of tension ran through the security detail. And then, through the tinted window of the vehicle, she saw him. President Donald Trump. His face, instantly recognizable from countless television appearances, was turned towards her, his expression unreadable. A Secret Service agent, his face stern but his movements surprisingly gentle, approached Lily. He knelt down, his voice low and calm amidst the surrounding commotion. He took the drawing and the letter from her trembling hands. Lily held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest like a trapped bird. She watched as the agent spoke into his wrist, then returned to the limousine. Moments stretched into an eternity. Then the agent returned, a slight smile softening his features. "The president will see you," he said, gesturing towards the White House. Lily's breath escaped her in a rush of relief and disbelief. Her mother rushed to her side, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and pride. Within minutes, Lily and her mother were being ushered through the imposing gates, past the stern-faced guards, and into the hallowed grounds of the White House. The whirlwind of security checks and hushed hallways was a blur. And then, after what felt like both an instant and a lifetime, she found herself standing in the Oval Office, the very heart of American power, the imposing presence of President Trump before her. The Oval Office was even more awe-inspiring than Lily had imagined. The rich, deep blue carpet, the soaring ceilings, the historical artifacts displayed with quiet dignity. It all spoke of power and history. President Trump gestured towards a plush, velvet chair positioned near his large, imposing desk, a piece of furniture that looked both ancient and powerful. He leaned back in his own high-back chair, its leather creaking softly, his expression a complex mixture of curiosity, weariness, and a hint of the many, pressing demands on his time that Lily couldn't possibly comprehend, but intuitively sensed. "Well, hello there," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, a stark contrast to the booming, assertive tones she had heard in his public speeches. "You're Lily, I understand. My aide mentioned a very energetic young lady had something important to tell me. What is it, little girl?" His eyes, a keen, sharp blue, fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel both seen and slightly intimidated. Lily took a deep, steadying breath, the air in the Oval Office feeling thick with history and importance. Her small hands, still slightly trembling, clutched the letter in her lap, the folded paper a tangible link to her hopes and fears. She looked up at the president, her gaze meeting his, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope, nervousness, and a desperate plea. "Mr. President Trump," she began, her voice trembling slightly, the words catching in her throat like tiny, frightened birds. I came here to talk about my dad." The carefully constructed sentences she had rehearsed countless times seemed to dissolve in the face of the real president, the weight of the moment overwhelming her. Her voice caught again, and tears, hot and stinging, welled up in her eyes, threatening to spill over and betray the carefully maintained composure she had striven for. President Trump's expression softened almost imperceptibly, a fleeting shift in his features that Lily, in her heightened state of awareness, noticed instantly. There, don't cry," he said, his tone a little more reassuring, a touch of unexpected kindness in his voice. "Speak up. Tell me what's wrong." "I don't have a lot of time, as you can imagine." He gestured vaguely around the room, a subtle reminder of the immense responsibilities he carried. "But I'll listen. I always have time to listen to a young lady with a problem." Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, the gesture childlike and vulnerable. She took another, shaky breath, trying to regain control of her emotions, to find the strength to articulate her father's story, her family's predicament. "It's about my daddy, Michael," she started again, her voice gaining a little more strength, the initial tremors receding slightly. "My dad is a man of honesty, President Trump. He always taught me that honesty is the most important thing, and it has always been his guiding star, like the North Star you learn about in school. He had been unfairly fired for refusing to participate in the murky world of corporate fraud." The phrase, corporate fraud, sounded strange and heavy coming from her young lips, words she had overheard her parents whispering in hushed tones late at night. She paused, gathering her thoughts, trying to organize the complex adult world of business ethics and corporate wrongdoing into a narrative a child could understand, and more importantly, a president would listen to. He worked at this factory for 15 years, President Trump. 15 years. That's longer than I've been alive," she exclaimed, trying to convey the enormity of the time, the depth of her father's commitment. "He was a really good manager, everyone said so. He was fair, and he was kind, and all the people who worked under him, they really liked him and respected him. But then this new boss came, a new vice president, and he wanted my dad and the other people to do things that weren't right, to lie with the company's money, to cook the books. Mommy said that's what it's called." Again, the adult jargon felt foreign and weighty on her tongue. "My dad said no. He said it was wrong, morally wrong, and he couldn't do it. He said it would be betraying his values and betraying the trust of the people he worked with." Lily's voice grew stronger as she continued, the tears momentarily forgotten, pushed aside by the burning earnestness of her plea. "Because my dad wouldn't cheat, because he stood up for what was right, the new boss fired him. Just like that. They said it was restructuring, a cold, empty word that sounded like it meant nothing at all. But it wasn't. It wasn't restructuring, it was retaliation. He lost his job for being a good person, for being honest, for doing what was right, President Trump. The injustice of it all, the sheer unfairness, fueled her words, giving them a passionate intensity that resonated in the quiet Oval Office. She looked down at her hands for a moment, her gaze tracing the lines on her palms, the silence in the room amplifying the weight of her words. Then she looked back up at the president, her eyes now clear and unwavering, filled with a child's innocent worry and a daughter's fierce love. Ever since then, since Daddy lost his job, things have been really hard at our house. Really, really hard. My mommy is working so much, double shifts at the diner. She comes home so tired she can barely stand. But even with her working so hard, we don't have enough money. We've had to sell our car, and we've had to cut back on everything. And I might not be able to go back to school next year, to middle school, because we can't pay my tuition. I love school, President Trump. It's my favorite thing in the whole world. I love to learn, I love science and reading, and I love seeing my friends. The thought of not going back to school, of being separated from the familiar comfort of learning and friendship, was a heavy weight in her young heart. Lily's voice trembled again, the tears threatening to return as the full weight of her family's hardship pressed down on her. She clutched her drawing, the bright colors a stark contrast to the gray cloud of worry that had enveloped her life. "My daddy is the best daddy in the whole world," she declared, her voice thick with emotion, her love for her father radiating from her. "He's smart and he's kind and he works so hard. He always has. We just need him to have a job again, a good job, so he can take care of us, like he always has. And so I can go back to school." Her voice was filled with a desperate plea, a child's earnest cry for help, the immense weight of her family's hardship evident in her young face, in the tremor of her voice, in the tears that now finally began to spill down her cheeks. President Trump listened intently, his gaze fixed on Lily as she spoke, his usual boisterous demeanor, so often seen in rallies and press conferences, replaced by a quiet, almost somber attentiveness. He didn't interrupt, didn't fidget, didn't glance at his watch, a rare display of focused attention that spoke volumes. He seemed genuinely moved by the young girl's plight, her earnestness, her unwavering love for her father. When she finally finished, her voice trailing off into a soft sob, he leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful, contemplative. He steepled his fingers, the gesture Lily had seen him make countless times on television, a signal of deep thought, of weighing options, of considering a decision. "So Lily," he began, his voice surprisingly gentle, almost fatherly, "your father, Michael, was fired for being an honest man, for refusing to engage in cooking the books, as you put. That's what you're telling me." He summarized her story, ensuring he had understood the core of her plea, his tone devoid of judgment or dismissal, simply seeking clarification. Lily nodded quickly, eagerly, her eyes wide and earnest, her small face illuminated by a flicker of renewed hope. "Yes, sir. He just wouldn't do something that was wrong, even though they told him to, even though it would have been easier to just go along with it. And now because of that, because your father chose to do the right thing, your family is having a hard time, a very hard time, and you might not be able to go to school." He reiterated the consequences of her father's actions, highlighting the personal sacrifice her family was making. Another nod, this time accompanied by a fresh wave of tears that she quickly wiped away with the back of her hand, a gesture that tugged at something within the president, a chord of empathy perhaps, or a recognition of the innocence and vulnerability of childhood. President Trump sighed softly, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of many decisions, of countless burdens, of the immense pressures of his office. He picked up the drawing Lily had given his aide earlier, the vibrant colors and the childlike simplicity a stark contrast to the serious documents and weighty reports that usually adorned his desk. He studied the bright colors, the smiling faces of her family, the sun-drenched house in the background, the picture of a happy, stable life. "This is a very nice picture, Lily. You're a very talented artist. You have a very happy-looking family," he commented, his voice softening further, a hint of wistfulness in his tone. "We were happy," Lily corrected softly, her voice barely a whisper, the past tense hanging heavy in the air, "before all this trouble. Before Daddy lost his job." The president's gaze softened even more. He set the drawing down carefully on his desk, as if handling a fragile treasure, and reached for the phone, the gold presidential seal gleaming on its surface. "Get me Miss Johnson," he instructed his secretary, his voice becoming more businesslike, but still retaining a hint of the empathy he had shown Lily. "Yes, Miss Johnson, the head of personnel, immediately." He waited a moment, his eyes still fixed on Lily, his expression thoughtful, his mind already working, strategizing, problem-solving. When Ms. Johnson came on the line, her voice crisp and efficient over the speakerphone, President Trump's tone became more formal, more presidential, but still retained a thread of the personal concern he had displayed to Lily. "Ms. Johnson, I have a young lady here in my office, Lily. She's told me about her father, Michael, who was recently let go from a manufacturing company in Ohio. It seems he was let go for upholding ethical standards, for refusing to participate in questionable business practices. I want you to find his resume. My aide should have it. See if we have any suitable openings within our organization, anything at a senior management level that matches his experience and skill set. If we don't have an immediate fit within the administration, I want you to personally reach out to some of our contacts in the manufacturing sector, some of the best companies in the country. See if we can't find a good opportunity for him, a position where his talents and his integrity will be valued. It sounds like he's a man of integrity, a man of principle, and his daughter is very concerned about his well-being and her education. This is important, Ms. Johnson." He listened for a moment, nodding occasionally, absorbing the information Ms. Johnson was relaying. "Yes, I want this handled expeditiously. Time is of the essence. This sounds like a situation where we can potentially do some real good, make a real difference in this family's life. Get in touch with Lily's mother to get Mr. Michael's contact information, his resume, everything you need. And please, keep me updated on your progress. I want to know how this is developing." He hung up the phone, the click echoing in the quiet office, and turned back to Lily, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips, a flicker of genuine warmth in his eyes. "All right, Lily Bug," he said, using the same nickname his aide had mentioned, a touch of unexpected familiarity. "We've started the process. My people are going to look into this right away. Your father sounds like the kind of person we need in the workforce, in this country, honest and hardworking, someone who stands up for what's right." Lily's breath hitched in her throat, a gasp of surprise and overwhelming relief. Hope, a fragile, flickering feeling she hadn't felt so strongly in weeks, began to bloom in her chest, spreading warmth through her cold, anxious heart. "Thank you, President Trump," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, tears of relief now mingling with the lingering sadness. "Thank you so much. You don't know how much this means to us." "Now don't thank me yet," President Trump cautioned gently, his smile widening slightly, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "We still need to find the right opportunity for your father. It's not a done deal yet, but I have a good feeling about this. You're a very persuasive young lady, Lily Bug. Very persuasive indeed." He chuckled softly, a low rumble of amusement. "Tell your mother that she should expect a call from my office soon. And you, Lily, you need to go back to Ohio, go back home, and focus on your schoolwork. Education is very, very important. The most important thing, really. You keep learning, keep drawing, and we'll see what we can do for your father." The rest of Lily's visit was a bit of a blur, a dreamlike sequence of moments she would later replay in her mind countless times. President Trump, surprisingly relaxed and engaging, asked her about her favorite subject in school, science, she told him, her voice now filled with a renewed spark of enthusiasm, and even showed her a few interesting items on his desk, a miniature replica of Air Force One, a collection of presidential challenge coins, a framed photograph of his family. Before she left, he shook her hand, his grip surprisingly firm, and gave her a small, gleaming presidential coin as a keepsake, a tangible symbol of her extraordinary visit, her audacious courage, and the unexpected kindness she had encountered in the highest office in the land. The journey back to Ohio, this time by train, felt profoundly different from the anxious bus ride to Washington, D.C. The heavy weight of worry that had been pressing down on Lily and her mother had lessened. lifted by the fragile but persistent hope ignited by President Trump's words and actions. Lily clung to the president's words, replaying them in her mind, and the memory of his surprisingly kind demeanor, his genuine attentiveness. The presidential coin, cool and smooth in her pocket, was a constant reminder that something extraordinary had happened, that their desperate plea had been heard. Within a week, Lily's father, Michael, received a call from a representative in President Trump's organization, a polite and efficient woman who identified herself as Ms. Johnson's assistant. An interview was scheduled, not just any interview, but a serious, high-level interview for a senior management position at a large manufacturing conglomerate with significant ties to the president's business network. Michael, filled with a mixture of nervousness, disbelief, and burgeoning anticipation, prepared diligently. He dusted off his resume, practiced his interview skills, and spoke to Lily and her mother about the unexpected opportunity, his voice carrying a note of optimism, a lightness that had been missing for months, a welcome change from the somber tones that had become the soundtrack of their lives. The interview went exceptionally well. Michael's years of experience, his proven track record, and above all, his unwavering integrity, shone through. He spoke with honesty and passion about his commitment to ethical business practices, his belief in fairness and transparency, and his dedication to his work. A few days later, the call they had all been waiting for, hoping for, yet almost afraid to believe in, finally came. Michael had been offered the senior management position. The salary was even better than his previous job, a significant improvement that would not only alleviate their immediate financial worries, but also provide long-term security. The benefits package was excellent, including comprehensive health insurance and a generous retirement plan. It was more than just a job. It was a second chance, a lifeline thrown to a family adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The news spread through their small, rented home like sunshine after a long, oppressive storm. Lily and her mother burst into tears of unrestrained joy, hugging Michael tightly. The three of them a small island of happiness in a world that often felt cold and indifferent. The relief was palpable, almost physical, the crushing weight of financial anxiety lifting from their shoulders. The future, which had seemed so bleak and uncertain just weeks before, suddenly looked bright again, filled with possibilities and promise. Lily's tuition for middle school was paid in full, and with the extra income, she even got to return to her beloved ballet lessons. The graceful movements a welcome contrast to the anxieties that had stiffened her young body. The rhythm of their happy family life, disrupted and fractured by hardship, began to reassert itself, the dark shadow of uncertainty finally receding, replaced by the warm glow of hope and gratitude. Lily often looked at the presidential coin President Trump had given her, turning it over and over in her small hands, the eagle embossed on its surface gleaming in the light. It was more than just a keepsake. It was a tangible reminder of her audacious journey to Washington, D.C., the terrifying yet ultimately triumphant encounter in the Oval Office, and the unexpected kindness she had encountered in the highest reaches of power. She understood, with a growing sense of wonder and empowerment, that her bravery, fueled by her unwavering love for her father and her family, had made a tangible difference. She had spoken her truth to power, a small voice in a vast and complex world, and in this instance, against all odds, it had been heard. The story of Lily's extraordinary journey and her meeting with President Trump, the tale of a determined young girl's love and courage, garnered national attention. News outlets, initially skeptical, picked up the heartwarming narrative, drawn to the unlikely intersection of a child's plea and the president's response. Some lauded President Trump's compassionate and decisive response, portraying him as a leader with a heart, a man who cared about the plight of ordinary Americans. Others viewed it with a more cynical eye, suggesting it was a carefully orchestrated public relations move, a calculated attempt to soften his image. But for Lily and her family, the political interpretations were irrelevant. The outcome was undeniable, life-changing. A child's unwavering love and courage, combined with a moment of unexpected presidential intervention, had paved the way for a second chance, for a brighter future. Lily continued to excel in school, her passion for learning reignited, her spirit unburdened by the anxieties that had clouded her young life. Her father thrived in his new role, his honesty and integrity once again valued and appreciated, his skills and experience finally recognized by an employer who understood the true meaning of ethical leadership. Their family had weathered a difficult storm, emerging stronger, more resilient, and infinitely more grateful than before. And Lily carried with her a profound and lasting lesson, that even the smallest voice, when filled with determination, fueled by love, and directed with courage, could sometimes reach the most powerful ears, and in doing so, change the course of lives in ways unimaginable. What are your thoughts on Lily's extraordinary efforts and President Trump's response? Do you believe in the power of individual action to create change, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds? Share your opinions and insights in the comments section below. If you were moved by Lily's story and her unwavering love for her father, please give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us share more inspiring narratives and reach a wider audience. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family to spread the message of hope and the importance of standing up for what you believe in, no matter how small you may seem or how daunting the challenge may appear. And for more compelling stories that explore the resilience of the human spirit, the power of hope, and the unexpected ways in which lives can be touched, subscribe to our channel. Your engagement and support helps us continue to bring you content that matters, stories that inspire, and narratives that remind us of the enduring strength of the human heart. Thank you for watching, and remember, even the most daunting challenges, the most formidable obstacles, can be overcome with courage, determination, unwavering love, and just a little bit of hope.